Hello everyone, so I am back with another video on this channel, and in today's video we are going to solve a LeetCode problem using JavaScript. So the problem statement is like this: we have been given an integer array nums and we need to rotate the array to the right by k steps. So for example, let's just say we have an array of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and if k is 3, then the first step, the last element which is 7 is popped from the array and pushed to the first index, and 7 is stored in the first index. In the second step, we take 6 out of the array, that is 6 is taken out and pushed to the front of the array, and then 5 is taken out and pushed to the front of the array, and the resultant array becomes 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4. So similarly, if this is the array, and if you want to do two rotations, then 99 will be shifted first, and then 3 will be shifted second, and the array will be 3, 99, -1, and -100. So the first way in which this can be solved is by taking the element from the right hand side, which is we can pop the element from the right hand side and push it to the first of the array. So this has to be done in place, that is the nums needs to be updated directly and we don't have to return anything. So what we can do is first we can write a for loop which will start from 0, go till k, and we'll increment it by 1. Then during each of this time, what we can do is we can take a popped element, which is the last element from the array. So we'll go nums dot pop. We'll take the last element, and now we need to push the element to the front of the array. So for that, what we can do is we can use splice method. So splice method syntax is like this: we first specify the index at which we want to make the change. Then we specify how many elements we want to remove from the array. So in this case, we don't want to remove any element, but we want to push an element to the front of the array. That is the next parameter in which we can specify all the items which needs to be pushed to the front of the array. So what we can do is we can write nums dot splice. Now this operation needs to be undertaken at the top of the, like, we need to take this popped element and we need to add it before 1. So we'll specify that we want to make a change at index 0. We don't want to remove any element, so we'll specify 0 here. That is, we don't want to remove any elements. This specifies the number of elements to be removed. And then we'll take the popped element and we'll push it to the front of the array. Now let's go console.log and let's print out nums. And let's see if this works. So we'll run the code. So as you can see, during the first iteration, 6 got removed from 7 got removed and it got pushed to the first. Then 6 got cycled out and it got pushed to the first. And then 5 got cycled out and it got pushed to the first. And as you can see, our answer is same as the expected answer. And the runtime is around 91 milliseconds. So this solution works for the default case. So now let's submit the code and check what we get. Now it is judging the code and we will see the output. So as you can see, we have time limit exceeded error. The reason for this is because we are continuously popping out the element from the array and pushing it to the front of the array. And in some cases where the input is large, this kind, like if there are too many number of operations, for example, here we have 54,944 operations. So in that case, the cyclic operations goes for a toss. Now what should we do for this? One thing that we can do is we can see that during the kth iteration, that is in the 3 cycles, what we do is we take the last 3 elements and we take them to the front of the array. That is, if we compare the input array and the output array directly, we see that 5, 6, 7, which are the last 3 elements of the array, are taken out of the array and pushed towards the first. So instead of taking out one element one by one from the elements of the array, what we can do is we can take all 3 elements together and we can push them to the start of the array. By that way also we will get 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4. Similarly, when k is 2, we take 3 and 99 out of the array and we take those values to the start of the array. So how do we achieve this? Now, as I mentioned, splice can be used for not just for insertion but also for removal of the array. So what we can do is, instead of popping individual elements from the array and going through a cyclic loop, what we can do is we can run the splice method, this time for removing the elements. So this will start from the index, that is from the starting from the end of the array towards the length of the key. So what we can do is we can write, we want to start at the index which is, let's just say, nums.length minus k, that is the index, like the third index from the last. Then we want to remove the elements which are equal to k itself, and then we will see what output we get first before we move towards that. And we can take these elements, so splice returns those elements, so we can write pop elements is equal to nums.splice, and let's just see what we get first. So we write const or console.log, and let's see what we get in the popped elements. So these are the popped elements, and let's run the code again. So these are popped elements, which is 5, 6, 7, which we wanted, and nums currently has 1, 2, 3, 4. Our next task is to take these elements and put them towards the start of the array. So these popped elements which we have, for example, 5, 6, 7 needs to be at the start of the array. So for that, what we can do is we can write, again, we can go with splice method, this time for insertion. So we'll write nums.splice. Then we want to start at 0th index. Then we don't want to remove any elements, so we will go with 0. And we want to push all these elements of the popped array into our beginning of the array. So for that, we will use spread operator. So spread operator syntax is triple dot and then the popped elements. So this, what spread operator will do is it will take all the elements of the array and it will pass them as the individual parameters instead of just an array. Now we can see what we get by running the code. So as you can see, the expected output, which is 5, 6, 7 at the beginning and 1, 2, 3, 4 at the later, is met, and the popped elements is working properly. So this works. So let's submit the code and check if there is an error in the existing edge cases. And now we have an error. So what happened here is we had an array which is 1, 2, and it is rotated 5 times. That is, 2 is taken to the front, and then 1 is taken to the front, then 2, then 1, so on and so forth. And it is done for 5 times. And after that, the expected output is 1, 2, because for the first 4 times, the array will remain same. And then 2 will come at the front of the array, and 2, 1 should be the expected output at the 5th iteration. But our output is 1, 2, because what we are doing is we are taking the elements from the array. Like if we see the popped elements, we see that we have 1, 2, and what we did was we pushed them towards the front of the array like this, and 1, 2 got printed out. So for this kind of iteration, this won't work. So what should we do for this? Now we came to know that during the first 4 cycles, the elements of the array remained unchanged because the k value was greater than the length of the array itself. That is, for the first 4 iteration. After the first 4 iteration, the array returns to its original elements, and only at the last iteration, the 5th iteration, the value changes. That is, the output needs to be changed. So what we can do is, during such calls, what we can do is we can change the value for k, and instead of rotating it based on the length of k, what we can do is we can use some different value. So what will be that different value is the core question. Now, if we carefully observe the output, we know that during only the last iteration, the elements needs to be replaced, and during the first 4 iteration, the elements needs to be ignored. So for that, what we can do is we can write const rotate, which is the number of rotations or the k value which we want to actually rotate, and we can set this as k mod nums.length. Why k mod nums.length? Because this will return 1 in this case. That is, k value is 5 and nums.length is 2. So this will return 1, and in that case, only the last iteration, the rotation will happen and we will get the output. So what we can do is we can take this rotate, and instead of nums.k minus k, we can write rotate and rotate here as well. Now let's run our code and check the default case if this works. So for default case, it will work just as accordingly because the length is like more than k. So the edge case is not met. And in this case, we have the 7 elements, and what we have written is we have written 3 mod 7, it will return 3, and the output will remain unchanged. But when the value was like in this case 5, then the k mod 2 will return 1, and we will replace those elements and we should get the proper output. Now let's try to submit our code and check if this works. I don't know if this will work, but we will check. And as you can see, the solution is accepted. So this k mod nums dot length is one thing which needs to be like figured out. It takes some time to figure out, but it is the only thing that is a little bit of what we can see, something which needs to be understood properly. So in this case, what happened was we divided by nums.length because we wanted the rotations to happen based on the length of the array as well as the k, and k mod nums.length works for us. So this was trial and error, but this works. And now we can remove the console.log and we can submit this solution as the final solution. So as you can see, it is accepted. And now if you have any doubts regarding this, the basic logic behind this is we don't rotate the array until we have the k iterations such that it is not exceeding the nums.length. And if it is exceeding the nums.length, then we ignore all the rotations which are happening cyclically, which needs to be ignored. So in this case, this ignores the cyclic rotations when k is greater than nums.length. So I hope this solution was clear to you all, and that's it from my end for today. Thank you. Have a nice day. Goodbye.